Okay, good morning, everybody. We're going to be starting the webinar in approximately 1 minute. So just take the time to ensure that your sound's working correctly. If there's any issues, please do feel free to put any comments into the chat and we'll assist where we can. You may wish to familiarise yourself with the handouts that's available as well. So on the right-hand side of the screen, we do have a handout section where you'll find the SEN Learning brochure, the SEN Learning introductory video, as well as our Fisher Family Trust research data. So feel free to download those from the handout section. I am going to allow some time at the end of the webinar as well for you to download the resources that's available. Okay, so I make it approximately 10, so I'm going to start the webinar now. So welcome to the latest SEN Learning webinar. Today we're going to focus on how e-learning can support your SEN department to provide a solid learning experience to all of your students, regardless of ability level. My name is Stephanie King and I am the Commercial Director here at SEN Learning, and I'm joined by our Regional Director, Craig Hendleman, who, time permitting, will be taking questions at the end of today's session. This is an open forum and a safe space, so please do feel free to ask any questions that you may have. To do so, click on the orange arrow on the control bar, which is found on the right-hand side of your screen, and type your question into the questions box. Okay, so now that the housekeeping is out of the way, let's get going. Supporting your SEN students has always been a complicated task. With so many different needs and requirements, it is generally quite difficult to put systems in place that can be used and enjoyed by more than one student at a time. More now than ever, we here at SEN Learning are receiving inquiries from head teachers and SENCOs of secondary schools, special schools, alternative provisions and secure units around the globe, exploring how SEN Learning's combination of interactive online learning, game-based rewards, and easily managed intervention and differentiation can fill a gap in each school's offering. And we do that in a number of ways, all the while underpinned by one statement, that SEN Learning should help to provide a launchpad for career in life to all students, regardless of ability or disability. Every so often, and as part of our ongoing support to schools, we host a roundtable for a group of users to ensure that every part of SEN Learning is working for them as it should be. Most recently, that virtual roundtable hosted a selection of alternative provision in special schools running from the very northern border of England all the way to its southern shores, and having worked closely with pastoral managers, SENCOs and learning support staff throughout his career, our Regional Director Craig Hendleman proudly stated that he is firm in the belief that just because a learner is based at an alternative provision, PRU, or special school by circumstance, that it simply does not mean that it should be reflected on their intellect or ability, and in most cases, giving them a platform to prove their comprehension in the confines of a reward-based system is the best way to see them shine. So why then has it historically posed a significant challenge to get your SEN cohort revved up to get the most out of e-learning? The answer is complex yet simple at the same time. Complex because 90% of e-learning systems out there, as great as they can be, are full of content centered around the progression of your students that track either above, on, or slightly below the average flight path. This, of course, gives the system the best chance possible of being seen as a contributor to school success on school leadership boards. All the while, however, students that travel on a significantly lower flight path see the system as something for the clever kids and disengage with it almost immediately. But that doesn't mean that they do not want to do as well as their peers. In fact, in most cases, it is quite the opposite. And simple because there is absolute rock-solid evidence out there by organisations such as the Fisher Family Trust that with as little as 10 task hours of e-learning usage, while pupils see on average 1 GCSE grade better in 2 subjects, those students that fall under the disadvantaged category see improvements of 1 GCSE grade better in 3.5 subjects. That's an equivalent progress aid gain of plus 0.35. So how are we different in our approach, and how can we support you in supporting your SEN students through e-learning? Firstly, SEN Learning is not a system that targets just one cohort at your school. We built SEN Learning from the ground upwards with the very aim to ensure that regardless of ability level or social advantage, that the system can work for you. Secondly, and as part of that promise, we allocate each and every one of our schools a dedicated school success manager, a team of former head teachers and senior leaders in education that will train, support, and encourage new innovative ways to use SEN Learning throughout the life of your journey with us as part and parcel of every single subscription that we offer at no extra cost. And this is important because we, as an organisation that has always held corporate social responsibility as one of our most important core values, refuse to leave a student behind. I will make no presumptions as to just how familiar every person here is with SEN Learning, so with your permission, I would like to firstly touch base on the basics. SEN Learning is a multi-award-winning educational software provider that has been at the very forefront of e-learning for over 25 years now. Our blend of both teacher and student-driven learning, supported by interactive self-marking activities, virtual schooling and intervention, all delivered online, has been tried, tested and proven over the years, making us one of the most trusted names in education. And we don't use the word proven without having the evidence to back us up. And you will find a copy of that report in the handout section of your control panel. One of the reasons we are so popular in schools of every type is the fact that we supply award-winning content for all key stages and all subjects straight off the shelf. So there is very little ramp-up time from getting your students and staff excited about a new shiny resource and actually delivering it to them. And it's that word, excitement, that we're going to focus on here for a while, because I think most of you will agree, keeping an element of excitement in learning is one of the most difficult, yet most rewarding things we can do if we get it right. And it can be difficult because in a lot of cases, students that were placed in a secondary school before any formal assessment that then led them being placed in an alternative provision, be that due to health or behaviour, can develop a hardwired dislike of education. And that subsequent move to another school generally comes late, which can be hard to work around. So what can we do to engage these learners and keep them engaged in their learning? Strangely, the answer does not come from futuristic learning platforms or 21st century technology. Our answer comes from a journey to ancient Greece, from a philosopher some of you might have heard of, named Plato, student of Socrates, teacher of Aristotle, an all-round smart chappie. Plato once said, "Do not, my friends, keep children to their studies by compulsion, but by play." And that snippet of genius means as much now than it did then, if not more so. So the mix of blending your learning with a gamification element is a massive boon to keeping your SEN learners engaged, both in and out of school. And many e-learning providers across the board, in one way or another, have made space within their system for gamification, either as an integral part of their offering or as an additional benefit that unlocks for learners should they reach a certain requirement, such as time spent or score received. At SEN Learning, as one of the UK's largest edtech suppliers, we utilise gamification to put another layer of engagement into the system. Through work completed on SEN Learning that has either been set by a teacher or completed independently, learners can choose to complete in SEN World, an online journey where they can travel through a number of interactive scenarios with surprises dotted along the way, all the while collecting new accessories for their own unique and customizable avatars. Students can also choose to compete both on school leaderboards, but more importantly, with their own chosen buddies, both in STEM World and by being able to set challenges for their friends. We've been overwhelmed with positive stories about how schools have successfully engaged their SEN cohort through our system from the offset. But SEN Learning isn't all purchasable content for you to assess and review your students. One of the most important parts of our offering to support your SEN cohort is the ability to create your own content, rich activities based on the individual knowledge that you have of your students. And that is the reason that SEN Learning has given all teachers the ability to not only edit the content already available, but to create their own unique personalised content using our very own activity builder. Our activity builder is there for you to really work your creative muscles, to create content-rich activities that will engage all of your students or individual students under your care. A great example of that came from an alternative provision that I visited earlier this year, not too far away from me here in sunny Sunderland. The head teacher and I had a lengthy conversation around how they have managed to go above and beyond engaging their students with STEM learning. And that, to no small part, was due to their ability to create absolutely world-class content for their learners based around what was popular at that time. In this case, the film Jumanji was all that the students were talking about. It had everything that they enjoyed: action, a bit of adventure, and a lot of The Rock. So the staff ensured that for a number of lessons moving forward, they had Jumanji-themed activities, including those built on STEM Learning, to cover a number of different topics using pictures, audio, and even video streamed from YouTube. The students absolutely loved it and took to it immediately, which has influenced the way that they deliver lessons to their learners ever since. And the sky really is the limit with our activity builder. So we urge you to dig deep into your imagination, use the different question types available on STEM Learning, make them colourful and wonderful, and in some cases a little strange. And if that alone isn't sweet enough music to your ears, we will reward your staff with Amazon vouchers just for creating content. Having worked directly with schools for a number of years and through a number of challenges, I'm sure, as you would imagine, we have quite a number of schools that are happy to sing our praises to other schools when they feel that STEM Learning can make a similar impact in their school. And two of those schools who I'm delighted to introduce you to today are Eden Park High School in Beckenham and Lincoln Christ Hospital School in Lincoln. Both schools have been using STEM Learning brilliantly now, and it's our pleasure to have them here with us today. Kate Bayman, the SENCO at Eden Park, and Martin Whitaker, the assistant head at Lincoln Christ Hospital School, have kindly agreed to speak to you all today about how they are currently finding triumph through adversity using STEM Learning as a core part of engaging their SEN learners. As Kate and Martin use e-learning in very different establishments, I feel it will be really useful to hear both of their views today. So good morning, both of you. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning.
Morning, Stephanie.
Thank you. So just to begin, we'll begin with yourself, Kate. Can you give us all an overview of your school context, please?
Absolutely. So we're a new free school that currently has 600 students and 3 year groups. So we opened 3 years ago, but we've only currently been in our actual building for 1 year. We are part of a greater trust that includes secondary and primary schools. We have a particularly high number of PPG students in our school, and we strive for equality for all. That's our kind of ethos. And we also have an extended day, which lasts until about 4:45 each day.
Brilliant. And what about yourself, Martin? Your school's quite different to Kate, so could you just give us an overview of your school as well?
Yeah, we're a standalone academy, what I would call a genuine comprehensive school in the city. We have around about 1,250 students from year 7 to year 13. The makeup of our school is we've got a significant white working class British ethnicity across the school, and we face the challenge of a great deal of apathy towards education from a lot of the wards that we serve. We do have a real socioeconomic mix. For that, anyone that knows Lincoln, it's got a beautiful cathedral and top of town area, which is quite affluent, and then we also serve some rather large council estates, but then also serve villages that are just outside Lincoln that are very much rural in their makeup. So we face those different sort of city and rural challenges. We've got about 35% of our school that are disadvantaged, and about 16% that access some level of SEN support.
And Martin, thank you. Could you provide us an overview of your school's teaching and learning strategies, please?
Yeah, so in terms of that, we focus on delivering high quality lessons first and foremost. That's what we want our teachers to spend their time doing. We're also deeply passionate about social justice and having an environment within school that allows students from all sorts of backgrounds, all sorts of ability ranges to achieve what for them is individual excellence.
And how does e-learning support with this?
E-learning really stands alongside our curriculum. We're quite a traditional school. A lot of our buildings are very old, which is fantastic. The school looks great, but it provides lots of challenges in terms of technology. So we have a very traditional curriculum, and e-learning stands alongside that. Sometimes within the classroom, but often outside of the classroom, engaging students with their independent learning and teaching them how to learn independently as well. So we use e-learning a lot in terms of homework, in terms of revision, aiding retrieval and long-term memory. And we also feel that e-learning is quite supportive with our families as part of the secondary curriculum, because we have a lot of households who struggle to support their children with their education at home. So we find that e-learning is a really valuable resource to support students when they don't have their teacher in front of them.
And what about yourself, Kate? Can you provide an overview of your school's teaching and learning strategies and how e-learning can support with this?
Yeah, of course. As with Martin, the teaching and learning team leads a culture where outstanding practice is championed. Students are consistently challenged to reach new heights, and lifelong learning is promoted. We really focus on giving the students 21st century skills through our teaching and help them become leaders in the future. The staff are really experienced, and we have a teaching and learning team who constantly share best practice and update the whole staff on the areas that are working really well. We have also, it's quite interesting, we have an extended day, as I mentioned, so the students don't do any homework at home, they do it all in school in independent learning sessions. So teachers set work via the computer, and students have to sort of manage that time themselves to complete everything that's been set that day. In terms of how e-learning supports with this, as you can imagine, that's a godsend. So in many cases, teachers will use SEN Learning to actually set the independent sessions for that day, whether that's tasks that they've devised themselves or they've tapped into the resources on SEN Learning. This is fantastic because, as you may be aware, the activities mark themselves. So as students are completing homework, we're getting fresh data straight away, which helps us massively. With the learning support in the independent sessions, students can work at their own pace, they can be set differentiated work, and I've not found one student who doesn't enjoy working on the computer or has an issue with accessing SEN Learning, so it's very effective for us in this independent learning time.
And what does an e-learning platform provide those learners with SEN that alternative resources can't? Kate, could you answer that question for me, please?
Yeah, I think one of the really important things about students on the SEND register is remembering that students are on that register for a whole host of reasons, and it's not always they're not always low ability achievers. You know, it's important to understand that. And I think often students on the SEND register have things sort of done to them, as opposed to them leading the provisions and being the voice that that kind of brings everything together. So I think by giving them the opportunity to work on SEN Learning or an e-learning platform, they get the autonomy and the control, and they can work at their pace, and they have the opportunity to, so in our independent sessions, we don't tell them which order to do things in. They can select and choose, which creates a sense of engagement there. If students get a question wrong, they can instantly work through, and they eventually they find the right answer, and that's embedded, so they can continue to move on. They don't get stuck. So it's always, the learning is always flowing, and they can make a correction to this correct answer. Students enjoy the platform setup, and they can work at their own pace and see the results regarding to this. We get fresh data straight away, and they can choose work that's suitable for them. So I think it's, in a nutshell, it's really about them having autonomy and control of their own learning and progress.
What's your thoughts on this, Martin? What do you think an e-learning platform provides those learners with SEN that alternative resources can't?
Yeah, so I echo a lot of what Kate said there. I think one of the other key points is a level of familiarity with the platform. That it's something which our SEN students a lot of the time will work alongside their key workers with in school, and will work on SEN Learning within the school day, but then we'll also work in SEN Learning outside of the school day. So there's that level of familiarity is something they're comfortable with. They know how to use that. They can engage in that, and I think it can help to reduce their levels of stress and anxiety about the work that they do, particularly outside of school, because of that familiarity that they've got. And we also find that our key workers with our SEN students, they can also take a high degree of ownership of the student usage on SEN Learning with their linked students, to set and track work and complement the work that's done in lessons as well. So we find that it real positive in terms of engaging SEN students in the learning and the rest of their curriculum.
And obviously there's a lot of e-learning resources out there that you can use. I just want to pose the question to you both. What led you to use SEN Learning? So Martin, I'll begin with yourself. What led your school to use SEN Learning?
Yeah, we've used SEN Learning for many years now. Going back probably around about 12 years as a progress leader within year 10 and year 11, SEN Learning was something that I engaged the school with in terms of really a revision platform at that time for students approaching their examinations. However, over the years, sort of championed SEN Learning within school, and it very much has grown and developed into much more than just something to help students revise, and being much more a key part of what departments and teachers use as their tools to teach and engage students within their lessons. So we use SEN Learning right across year 11 to year 7 to year 11. Particularly focused on engaging students in year 7 when they first come to the school. It's the first platform that students engage with and access outside of school. So we find that it's exceptionally accessible, really good value as well, and that ability to track what students are doing is part of why we think it's invaluable, so that we can support their learning because of what we see them doing on SEN Learning.
And are you using any other online resources along with SEN Learning?
Yeah, we do. We have a toolbox of different things. The other major platform that we use is GCSE Pod, but we also have some departmental specific resources. So science are engaging with Educate, maths are engaging with My Maths. So we find that, I think the power of that is having a blend of different resources, so that I think particularly with SEN students, some students naturally will engage more with one platform than another. So you've just got a toolbox of different e-learning resources that students can engage with, but SEN Learning is one, and I think particularly to do with sort of the SEN world, the avatars, the different things they can do within there, that we find that lots of SEN students, lots of students from the wider cohort really engage with, particularly in the younger years.
And have you noticed any significant impact on the learning and the progress from engaging with SEN Learning?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of the things that I don't see as rocket science, but when a child engages in their learning outside of their normal taught lessons, that they are going to make more progress. They're going to that knowledge is going to be much more secure for them. So yeah, the fact that we can see and track that learning is taking place outside of the classroom, and teaching the students that the skills of learning independently as well, because that without doing that, you're far less likely to be successful. The other thing is that it engages parents within the learning as well, because parents, we give access so parents can see how much time their child is spending on SAM Learning, can get feedback on that, and we find lots of parents will log on to SAM Learning with their child to see where they are on a leaderboard, what's been set for them, how they did on certain tasks. So we find it in terms of engagement a real valuable tool.
Brilliant. And what about yourself, Kate? Your school, why did you choose to use SAM Learning?
Well, I was in charge of finding something that would support the students with SEND in the independent sessions, which initially we had at the end of every day. I'd heard really good things about SAM Learning. When I investigated it, I found that the layout of it was really accessible. It had a specific angles to engage students. So they created their own little avatar and they could compete against other students and keep track of their scores. And also I was amazed by the range of resources. So it had everything that we needed, as well as being able to contribute it to ourselves. That was initially why we went into there, and also other supports within lessons, but it was mainly for our independent learning times that we needed a resource.
And how are you using SAM Learning to support your teaching and learning strategies? Are you using any other online resources along with this?
Yeah, for some students, we allow them to take tablets into lessons, and we have quite long lessons. They're 100 minutes. So we have 3 100-minute lessons a day with a break at the end of every 100 minutes. For some students, especially if they've just come from primary school, it's a bit intense. So we let students take tablets into the lessons, and then they're able to, if they're struggling to access parts of the content of the lessons, they can use SAM Learning because it's in line with the curriculum and Ofsted approved. They can go in, they can embed some of the knowledge that they've learned in the lessons and just have a little time out, which works really well in the large lessons for us. And then obviously we use it in independent learning, as I've explained. We also use different resources, as Martin said. We use Seneca and Hegarty Maths, and we use SAM Learning for a literacy intervention whole school, which we predominantly use SAM Learning, but we also bring an accelerated reader, which gives students just a little bit of time away from the screen and tracks their reading progress by giving them a reading age, getting them to read a book and then quizzing them, and that works really nicely with the SAM Learning provision.
And how well have your learners engaged with SAM Learning? Have you noticed any significant impact on the learning and the progress of those particular learners?
We have in the literacy groups, so they're smaller groups, they're in groups of 10 in every year group. That's had a massive impact because they're facilitated by a learning mentor, but the students self-manage. So they go through, they're directed on what they need to do, but they can select the order they do it. They get some autonomy, as I said, and they really engage. It's a really intensive 6-week program, and those students, from the first time they start, we can map their progress, which is fantastic, and that's been very successful. And then we've also found that students in other lessons, they've been able to embed the knowledge by going through the same content on SAM Learning, and as I said, just accessing their own little time and space within a large lesson.
And both of you seem to have found huge success using e-learning resources within your schools. Have you encountered any challenges with using e-learning with any of your learners? And if so, how have these been overcome? I'll start with you, Martin.
Yeah, I think sometimes outside of school access does become a problem, and I think that's sort of magnified at the moment, where you might have a family who do have access to a laptop or a tablet, but for any one point in time, there's 3 or 4 different children that need the access to it. So it can be an issue. But I think the good thing about SAM Learning is the fact that you can access it across a range of different devices. Lots of our students access SAM Learning through their mobile phone. When I speak to families, lots of, particularly with the boys who we sometimes want to engage a little bit more in their education, most of them have a PlayStation or an Xbox. So the fact that there's an app that can work through that, the children are often devastated that I tell their parents that, and the parents are delighted that they find that news out. But the engagement, I think, is key, and access is a key reason why we like SAM Learning, because it is easy for students and families to get on board and to use it.
And what about yourselves, Kate, at your school? Have you encountered any challenges with using e-learning?
We've struggled a little bit in lockdown with students that haven't access to technology, as Martin mentioned, which can be a problem, but we found a way to get either technology to them or hard copies of this. The only area that we found before lockdown was, for example, with the literacy interventions, finding a benchmark assessment that we could use as a way to map progress. So SAM Learning was really useful at looking at how well the students fared in each individual task and how long they were spending, but we needed a kind of benchmark assessment to do at the start and at the end, which would show the progress. But SAM Learning helped us transfer a SATs paper into the SAM Learning format, so that then it could run through the program perfectly, which really helped us. So everything was contained within the SAM Learning program, and we had all the data immediately after the students have finished.
Brilliant. And so finally, have you any top tips that you would provide other schools who may be considering using SAM Learning for SEN learners in particular? I'll start with yourself, Kate.
I think once you've decided to go with SAM Learning, my top tip is really getting it out there. So, and again, SAM Learning staff are incredible at helping you with this. So we launched it straight away, letters home, assemblies. We made sure that when we had the open days for the prospective students in year 6, that we had a SAM Learning stall. Again, SAM Learning staff volunteered to come and help us with that, which is amazing. So I think it's really getting in one big swoop, getting all the information out there. And I found, without any shadow of a doubt, parents were so interested, kids were so interested, and then it all took off and it helped it run itself. So I'd say that's really key. So once you decide, launch it with everyone, launch it with the staff. Again, you can get training for your staff. So do that all succinctly so that it really has an impact. And then you might want to focus on certain groups of students initially. So we do it in terms of the independent learning, there's not a set structure yet. Teachers can use SAM Learning as and when, and they do. The kids are very keen to use it. But what I'm doing first of all is really targeting the low achievers and making sure that, so for example, our literacy groups, I'm focusing on them first, and then we will sort of create a more structured approach for the whole school once we've selected these high need groups.
Brilliant. And what about you, Martin? Have you got any top tips that you would provide other schools who may be considering using SAM Learning?
Yeah, I mean, again, lots of things that Kate said there in terms of particularly the setup and making sure that the takeoff of using SAM Learning is as ordered and organised as it can be. I think really engaging parents with SAM Learning is key, and I think a real power within SAM Learning is the fact that you've got that familiarity between school and between what happens at home, and when parents are on board, it's much easier to make sure that takes place. I think with staff as well, for staff to see that SAM Learning is a real benefit and a real bonus in terms of reducing their workload, particularly around homework. I think that's a way with lots of our staff. That was the initial bit that hooked them into looking more into SAM Learning, and then they become more engaged in that. And I find, just as someone who leads the platforms within school, just sending out on a regular basis just little reminders, little sort of success markers in terms of how many hours, who's been doing what, where we've seen benefits with intervention, and sending out your YouTube videos just to remind staff, this is how you do this is how you do that. It just helps to continually keep things in the mind of staff, and therefore they use and access SAM Learning more.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both so much for your feedback today. If anybody would like to talk to our guest speakers directly, please either let us know in the chat room or email me after the webinar today, and I'm sure I'll be able to arrange that for you. So once again, thank you both for taking the time today to share with us all your views and feedback on how e-learning can support your SEN learners.
Thank you.
At this time, I would also like to take the time to introduce you to our latest short video welcoming you to SEN Learning that you will find in the handout section under the control panel to the right hand side of your screen. So please do take 5 minutes after this webinar should you wish to learn a little more about SEN Learning's award-winning content. I will be providing that time at the end. And you'll also find there our latest brochure and our FFT impact report, which demonstrates the positive impact SEN Learning can have on your student outcomes, and in particular those students who are from disadvantaged backgrounds. Okay, we're now going to be holding a question and answer session around the questions that you have asked throughout today's webinar. And we're also more than happy to arrange a virtual demonstration specific to your school at a later date, either with myself or Craig. So please do feel free to get in touch via phone or email on the details that I will be providing shortly and also in your webinar pack. Okay, over to you, Craig. I see there are quite a few questions that we have today.
Yeah, thanks, Steph. And yeah, they really have. So I'll try to answer as many as I can in the short time that we've got. But I just want to say that if I don't get a chance to answer all of them, either myself or Stephanie will get back to you soon after today's webinar. Okay, so the first question that we had was from Wendy. And Wendy said, the activity builder looks fantastic. Is there a limit to the length of video I can put on each question? Thank you, Wendy. I'm glad that you like it, firstly, and we're really proud of it. And actually, your question is one that I wondered myself not too long ago. So I actually took it upon myself to create a task with a 24-hour-long video on one of the screens, and it worked absolutely perfectly. I'm not suggesting that you do the same when you put a 24-hour video on one of your questions, but by all means, if you feel that if you're seeing an increase in engagement and enjoyment from your students by adding longer video clips, then absolutely I'd encourage you, fill your boots. The next question is from David, who asked, is it compulsory for students to be part of a leaderboard? David, that's a great question. And the simple answer is no, they don't. As Steph mentioned earlier, we built SEN Learning from the ground up to be accessible and enjoyable for all students, including those that simply don't want to compete on leaderboards or accept challenges from their friends. And actually, even though to some schools that functionality is just an option, to some students, it can be the booster that they need to engage. And it's absolutely okay to say to your students that their SEN Learning account belongs to them and that they have the power to an extent to use it as they wish, including, if you'll pardon me for using gaming terminology, as a single player game rather than a multiplayer. Thank you, David. Okay, so let's go for one more question. And Annie asked, could you please confirm that all teachers will get Amazon vouchers just for using your activity builder? Annie, thank you for your question. And I absolutely understand why you'd be dubious. I mean, after all, if something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. But we genuinely do pay out £20 worth of Amazon vouchers to each and every teacher that publishes their first 5 activities on SEN Learning. And we don't stop there either. Every 2 weeks, we publish a list of 3 topics. And if one of your staff members creates content around that topic, they automatically enter into a prize draw for a further amount of Amazon vouchers. Sometimes we even publish a list of bundles of content for teachers to create. And that, of course, pays out even more. So it's our little way of saying thank you for using SEN Learning to its fullest potential. Right, looking at time, I feel I should probably stop talking now, but for all of the questions again that we didn't have time to answer, I absolutely acknowledge them. Either Stephanie or myself will be in touch soon after this webinar. Stephanie, thank you. Back to you.
Thank you, Craig. And that, I believe, brings us to the end of our webinar. I do hope that you've enjoyed it as much as we have presenting it. Our education webinars have proven ever so popular since their launch. Therefore, we are going to continue to hold these on topics of your choice moving forward. So on that note, we are holding our next webinars, which we've received many requests for. So we have online review and assessment on the 23rd of June 2020 at 10 AM and 3 PM. We're also going to be holding personalised learning on the 30th of June 2020 at the same times. We're going to be covering a lot of information with regards to closing the gap. We're also holding our next MAT Leaders webinar, our MAT Leaders Forum, on the 7th of July, again at 10 AM and 3 PM, where we will be discussing proven models, not only for your students to catch up in September, but also around Key Stage 3 baseline assessments. Therefore, don't miss out and register for your space today. Should you have any special topic requests that you would like to see in the future, please post your suggestions in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. We are here to help our educators, and we do want to provide you as much as we possibly can to provide a launch pad for career in life. I'm now going to leave you to watch our video and to download our brochures, which we have provided in the handout section of your control panel. So I'm going to be leaving the webinar for the next 5 minutes. The top of your coffee, sit back, relax, watch the video. And if you do wish to get in touch, all of our details are on the screen there in front of you. We want to take this opportunity to wish you all the very best in these strange times. And we look forward to hopefully speaking to you all again very soon. Thank you.